Hi there, I'm Dr. Alessandra Latour, founder of the Latour Leadership Academy. For more than 16 years, I've worked with leaders across organizations to strengthen how they think, decide, and operate, especially in high pressure environments. This podcast is where we go beyond surface level leadership advice. We talk about the patterns, behaviors, and structural gaps that actually shape how leaders show up, and why capable leaders still get stuck. You won't find generic frameworks here. You'll find perspective, clarity, and the kind of thinking that helps you lead more effectively in the moments that matter most. If you're ready to lead with greater clarity, discipline, and intention, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Let's start today with a situation many people have experienced, or at least worried about. Rumors start circulating that layoffs may be coming. No official announcement has been made yet, but people are talking. Someone heard something from finance. Someone else noticed an unusual meeting on the executive calendar. Slack channels start to get quieter, side conversations start getting louder, and suddenly the entire emotional climate of the organization shifts. This is the exact moment where psychological safety either holds or collapses. When uncertainty enters the workplace, not all people respond the same way. Some team members immediately open their laptop, start updating their resume, not out of disloyalty, but out of practicality. They're thinking, if something happens, I want to be ready. Other team members quietly disengage. They stop raising their hand in meetings. They stop volunteering for projects. They do what's required, but nothing more. What people often call quiet quitting frequently starts in moments like this, when team members begin protecting their energy because they're not sure the organization will protect them. Then there are the team members who convince themselves they're safe. They stay overly optimistic, assuming their performance or tenure will shield them from any changes. Sometimes that optimism is helpful, but sometimes it leads people to ignore signals they should be paying attention to. And finally, there are those individuals who freeze, not because they're lazy or disengaged, but because uncertainty activates the brain's threat response. The uncertainty becomes so distracting that it's difficult to concentrate at all. Every email notification feels like it could be the one. Every meeting invite feels ominous. Work slows down, focus disappears, productivity drops. And here's the important leadership insight. In environments like this, psychological safety stops being a nice to have. It becomes an operational factor that directly impacts performance. Neuroscience research shows that when people perceive threats to stability, like potential job loss, the brain shifts resources away from higher order thinking toward basic survival responses, which means the very capabilities organizations say they want from their teams, creativity, innovation, problem solving, are the first things to disappear. In fact, when Google studied high performing teams through Project Aristotle, psychological safety emerged as the single most important factor in team success. More than talent, more than experience, more than structure. Why? Because fear changes behavior. When employees feel safe, unsafe, or uncertain, innovation drops dramatically. People stop suggesting new ideas because they don't want to draw attention to themselves. Feedback disappears because no one wants to risk saying the wrong thing. And retention begins to erode because team members quietly start preparing their exit strategy. In other words, the organization may not have announced layoffs yet, but psychologically, people have already started leaving because silence creates stories. When team members don't have information, they fill in the gaps themselves, and those stories are almost always worse than reality, which brings us back to the operational impact. Innovation slows down because people stop sharing ideas. Feedback disappears because team members don't want to attract attention, and retention starts to shift long before any official layoffs occur. Studies show that job insecurity significantly increases voluntary turnover because high performers often leave first when they sense instability. Not necessarily because they want to leave, but because they know they have options. I've experienced this uncertainty personally. I was laid off more than once within a very short period of time, twice, and then a third time within 3 years. I remember how destabilizing that first experience felt. You start questioning everything, your decisions, your direction, your value. But by the second and third time it happened, something shifted in how I approached my work. Instead of hoping instability wouldn't happen again, I assumed that change is always possible. Instead of assuming stability, I built resilience into my process. Every role I stepped in after that, I created a system for documenting the impact of my work. Programs launched, teams supported, metrics improved, projects delivered. Not because I was expecting to leave, but because I understood that careers are no longer linear or predictable. And having that record made the transition process dramatically easier when change did occur. But there's a deeper leadership lesson in that experience. People don't fear change as much as they fear uncertainty without support. Psychological safety doesn't mean protecting your team from difficult realities. It means creating an environment where people can face those realities without feeling alone, ignored, or misled. Because when leaders handle uncertainty with clarity, empathy, and honesty, something surprising happens. People don't necessarily become less aware of the risks, but they become more capable of navigating them. And that capability is what keeps innovation alive, even in uncertain environments. Leaders often assume that if layoffs haven't been announced yet, everything is still operating normally. But the emotional reality inside the organization tells a very different story. So the question becomes, what does leadership look like in these moments? How do leaders maintain psychological safety when the environment itself feels unstable? Well, it starts with transparency, but not panic driven transparency. First, communicate what you can, even if the answer is incomplete. Silence invites speculation, and speculation almost always amplifies fear. Second, acknowledge the uncertainty directly. Leaders sometimes try to protect morale by pretending everything's fine, but team members are remarkably perceptive. Ignoring the tension rarely reduces it. Third, reinforce stability where it does exist. Clarify priorities, clarify expectations, clarify what success looks like in the current moment. And finally, focus on maintaining dignity and respect in every interaction. There's a deeper leadership lesson here. When people feel valued as humans, not just as employees, psychological safety can survive even in difficult organizational moments. People don't fear change as much as they fear uncertainty without support. Psychological safety doesn't mean protecting team members from difficult realities. It means creating an environment where people can face those realities without feeling alone, ignored, or misled. That capability is what keeps innovation alive, even in uncertain environments. If you're leading a team right now, ask yourself one simple question. How much uncertainty are your people currently carrying alone? And what small step could you take this week to reduce it through clearer communication, acknowledgement, or support? And if this episode sparked a useful reflection for you, share it with another leader who's navigating uncertainty with their team. These are the conversations that help organizations move through difficult moments with integrity. Thanks for joining me today. If this episode challenged your thinking, that's the point. And it's exactly the kind of work we continue beyond the podcast. You can explore more at latourleadershipacademy.com, where I share leadership programs and resources designed to help leaders translate insight into sustained behavior change. And if you're not already subscribed, join our weekly newsletter at authenticleadershipunlocked.com. It's where I go deeper on the patterns shaping leadership right now and what most people are missing. Thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next episode.